In today's video, we're continuing on with our NHL season previews. Today, we're still completing the Atlantic Division, and we're looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs. Will this be the year they break through and finally have some playoff success? Is this team better or worse than last year? We'll discuss all the changes and where we think they're going to do this year coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're continuing on with our season preview series, looking at the Toronto Maple Leafs for the upcoming 22-23 NHL regular season. So if you're new to this series, just a quick rundown of how this is going to work. We're going to do a very quick recap of last season, take a look at how their recent playoff history has gone down, take a look at their coach and GM and what kind of history they have in those roles. Is there any pressure associated? Look at all the changes this team has gone through over the offseason, and then take a look at any prospects that might be able to get into the lineup and make an impact, and then what's their projected lineup looking like come opening night. So now let's take a look here and recap the 21-22 regular season. Of course, they finished second place in the Atlantic Division with 115 points. They had a record of 54-21-7, a real solid regular season effort. They scored 315 goals, which was tremendous. Second best in the league, only behind Florida, who had just a phenomenal year. Normally 315 most of the time would likely be first place. Goals against was not the worst, but certainly not the greatest either. Could be a little better for a team trying to win a Stanley Cup. 253 goals against for 18th best, so I think there's room for improvement there if they can manage that, but that's probably an area that I would certainly focus it on. They don't have any issues scoring, and really, when you're scoring at that high of a rate, defense and keeping the puck out of your net is almost always going to be the way to keep things moving along and progressing, where you're going to want to focus. Their power play was phenomenal. First in the league, 27.3%. That's a ridiculously high, good percentage. They did have some struggles in the playoffs, mind you, but that regular season number was awesome. The PK was pretty solid as well, 82.1% for 8th best. So given their PK where it was at and the goals against where it was at, I think it's fair to say cutting down on 5-on-5 goals probably would be an area to take a look at. If you can shave off even 10 or 15 goals a season. That might not sound like a lot, but that's actually would be quite substantial to move them up in the top 10 for sure. For playoffs, they've been making the playoffs now for 6 consecutive years. Unfortunately, they've all resulted in first round losses. So they have a nice streak going of being a playoff team, but they haven't gotten over that hump to get that first round series win. And actually, theoretically, if you go back to a couple of years ago when we had the bubble and the play-in series, they actually lost that and actually ended up, they were technically in the play-in round, but didn't proceed. That's when they lost against Columbus. And of course, 2004 was the last time that they've actually won a playoff series. So it's certainly been a long time, and this team needs to have some success soon, or we're really going to see some significant changes. We've been saying that for about 2 years. To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised we haven't seen a little bit more substantial change, but all the main characters remain. It's the supporting cast that has changed around them, and we'll see again here shortly how that's changed again for the coming year. Of course, Sheldon Keefe is the head coach entering his 3rd full season. Fair to say that their regular season numbers have gotten better under Keefe than they were previously under Mike Babcock. Of course, Kyle Dubas, the general manager, was hired back in 2018. So, of course, that's 4 full years. You have to think, too, he's also in the final year of his contract. And given all the lack of playoff success, I do think there's some pressure there. I don't know that we're going to immediately see any kind of a GM being fired. I don't think it's going to be anything, quick or anything like that. But I think if they go through another year and they don't see some progress in the playoffs, I honestly do wonder about the future of Dubas there. But we'll see how things go. Now let's take a look at how this team has changed. Let's first start with some key subtractions. Who has left the Leafs that are no longer with this club? Of course, goaltender Jack Campbell, who signed a lucrative deal with the Edmonton Oilers. That was the big change this year will be between the pipes. Campbell certainly had a good, healthy run as the Leafs goaltender. Certainly fair to say in some big games his numbers could have been better, but for the most part, he was really good for them. Ilya Mikheyev departs via free agency. He had been looking for a change of scenery for over a year. They decided to hang on to him last year, and to be honest, he got a chance to play more up in the lineup, and he really had a real solid year in a contract year, which was good. Now he's in Vancouver. Andre Kasha moves on as well. He was not retained. He was an RFA that was not qualified. Of course, Jason Spezza retires, so he's no longer on the ice, but he is still with the team, as he obviously is now an assistant to Kyle Dubas. Ilya Lyubushkin, who was a deadline acquisition, come over from Arizona, has moved on. He's now with the Buffalo Sabres. Peter Mrazek, of course, the other goalie, struggled hardcore last year, got traded to Chicago, so they're going to have a completely new tandem this year. Of course, Ian Scott, who wasn't at the NHL level, was a promising goalie prospect who retired at a very young age due to injuries. And of course, Colin Blackwell departs as a free agent as well, another member of the Leafs who was really only there last year. And of course, I have Rasmus Sandin with an asterisk, meaning as I record this video at least. Of course, it could be a couple days before it gets posted to YouTube, so things could change. So just make sure you check the pinned comment on that. If he happens to sign in the next day or two, that could be different. But just keep in mind, I'm recording this video on Tuesday, September 20th. Just shortly after lunchtime. So Sandin, as of right now, is unsigned and will not be there for the beginning, but doesn't mean things could change quickly. And of course, let's look now at the additions. Who's coming in to replace all these guys? Well, of course, between the pipes, your tandem is going to be Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. Of course, Matt Murray has struggled for the last 3 to 4 seasons. I see a lot of people talking on social media about how he had a hard time in Ottawa and that the defense in Ottawa was really the issue and all those types of things, but that's really not it. Take a look at Anton Forsberg's numbers in Ottawa. Those numbers were way better than Murray. If Murray struggled, why didn't Forsberg, right? And take a look at his numbers dating back to his last year, probably a year and a half or so in Pittsburgh. He was on a decline then. His numbers were declining at that point. So to me, Matt Murray's biggest issue is not being able to stay healthy. He's had his moments when he's been able to string together a good batch of games, but then he always seems to get hurt and something happens. His confidence goes out the window again. He's always working on getting it back. And certainly, for the Leafs' sake, hope he can find it and stick with it and stay healthy. But I do think that there was a risky move. Ilya Samsonov, to me, is a less risky move. Comes over from Washington. I'm surprised they let him go the way they did. He gets a short-term deal, prove-it kind of contract. I would probably bet on the idea of Samsonov likely taking the starting role at some point, and they may start off as a 1A, 1B type of deal, platooning, but I would think Samsonov has the better chance to be successful, but I guess we'll have to wait and be seen. Murray's got a lot of pedigree, a lot of experience, and let's see if, for the Leafs' sake, hopefully he can find it. They also brought in Calle Jarnkrok on a 4-year free agent contract. Of course, Nicholas Aube-Kubel comes over from the Cup champion Avalanche, so another Stanley Cup champion in their lineup never hurts. Certainly somebody who can play in their bottom six. They also signed Adam Gaudette, who comes over from Ottawa. They're bringing back Dennis Malgin from Europe. And they also signed a couple of depth defensemen with Jordy Ben and Victor Mete. Now, besides those guys, they also have a couple of guys in camp looking to find a contract, and that's Zach Aston Reese and goaltender Dylan Ferguson. I honestly think Aston Reese has a real good shot. I find it hard to believe that a guy like him has a PTO, but yet a player like Gaudette has an actual contract. Same with Malgin, not Malkin. So, that to me is questionable, but I think Aston Reese can certainly play and really bring a good defensive awareness to their bottom six, and he's a guy who can play in a few different spots as well. So to me, I think he's got a good shot at getting a contract and getting on the team. Now, those depth defensemen with like Ben and Mete might come in handy. Of course, Sandin is not there to start, at least as I record this. And we also just got word that Timothy Liljegren is also injured to start the season and might miss training camp. So there's no word yet on exactly what he's kind of looking at, but if he misses camp, then it's probably fair to say he misses at least a week or two of the season. So we'll see how things go there on that front. Of course, from a prospect perspective, do they have some players that could have an impact on this team? They absolutely do. There's not a lot, but I think we could see Nick Robertson be the main player who gets an NHL audition. Hard to say how they're going to do this because they really have so many forwards now that can play bottom six that they're probably going to end up losing a few on waivers. They may trade a few. The team could be busy, and I don't know sure how they're going to work in their youngsters like Robertson, of course. Nick Abruzes, of course, is another guy. Eric Källgren, who saw some action in goal last year, along with Joseph Wall, your two goalies that'll be in the minors. They could be available for call-up should Murray or Samsonov either falter or get hurt. Matthew Nyes, of course, will be looking at him maybe late in the season if he signs once his college season is over. We'll have to see. At least he won't have an impact early on. It would mainly be Robertson who would have the main opportunity in that regard. So looking at their projected lineup here, obviously your top six for the most part, like I said, is pretty much spoken for. You're going to have a line of Matthews, Marner, and Bunting. That's no doubt. Tavares, Nylander, likely Kerfoot, but they could put a guy like Robertson there too. If they want to give Robertson a chance over some of these kind of fringe bottom sixers, like I said, you've got, on top of Yarncroke and Aubé-Kubel, I expect to be there, but like Malgin, and you got Adam Gaudette, you still got Wayne Simmons, you still got Kyle Clifford. These guys, I don't know if they want to give Robertson more of a chance. If they do, to me, Robertson needs to play ideally top six. You could consider putting him with Tavares and Nylander and moving Kerfoot to the third line. So we'll see where that goes. But right now, we've got Kerfoot in there, and the third line being David Kampf, Pierre Engvall, and Calle Yarncroke. Now, we also got word today from Chris Johnson that Pierre Engvall may miss the start of the season as well. He's also dealing with an injury, might miss part of camp, but it's not confirmed yet that he won't be able to play opening night, but there is a possibility. But for the most part, when he's healthy, I expect that to be your third line. Your fourth line right now is looking like Gaudette, Aubé-Kubel, and Simmons, but there's so many players there to compete with, like I said, on top of these three. You've also got Aston Reese trying to get a contract. You got Dennis Malgin coming back from Europe. You got Joey Anderson. There's a lot there, and it's not really clear what direction they're going in. Their decor is going to be Riley and possibly Liljegren. Of course, like I said, Liljegren may not be there on opening night, so they may have to shuffle this around. You may have to go, Riley Brody, maybe go Muzzin Hall, and then Giordano and either Ben or Mente. That's a possibility, or they could go at the same time go Riley Brody, Muzzin Liljegren. I don't know how they're going to do it once everybody's healthy. Giordano Hall being your third pair, and with Ben Mente being in contention there for spots. And then, of course, you got Murray and Samsonov between the pipes. But by far, to me, the biggest question surrounding this team and determining if they can take steps forward is going to be goaltending and to a degree defense. I have no doubt this team can be a lethal juggernaut offensively. They can score with the best of them. There is no doubt about that. They have a wicked top six, and they have some pretty good options for bottom six, but it's hard to say with all these new faces how they're all going to mesh together. So like I said, the Leafs could be a busy team. Maybe we see a player get moved or two. Maybe there's waivers. There's going to be some interesting evaluations in that sense that way. But the goaltending is by far the biggest question. Can Matt Murray bounce back is the biggest thing here. I mean, they could have just signed Campbell for the amount of money they spent on these guys. At least you knew what you were getting. I mean, he may not have been perfect, and you might not have wanted to give him 5 years, but I don't know. To me, that might have been a less risky move than this. I mean, Murray still has a couple years in his contract. Hard to say how things are going to work out. But like I said, this is not a case of him struggling because he was on a Senators team that was struggling. The struggling was already there in Pittsburgh. Keep in mind, the Pittsburgh Penguins, to move on from their two-time Cup-winning goaltender, only asked for a second-round pick, and he's still in his 20s. It goes to show you that his value had dropped. So this is not a new thing. He struggled with concussions, and he struggled with a lot of other injuries. He seemed like he was getting hurt every time you turned around, and that was by far the biggest thing. Now, can he come back? We'll see. But I tell you, it's risky. I'm not really sure why we didn't see the Leafs maybe go a little bit more of a safer route. Maybe this works out for them, but there could have been other options out there that just might have been a little safer. Hard to say. And like I said, if they go through one more year, is Dubas' job really on the line this year? You have to think that there's some real pressure there. And, you're getting to the case here where Austin Matthews is going to be eligible for a contract extension next offseason. That's going to be a hot topic in Toronto. And if they go through another year without having playoff success, you got to think that might factor into his decision. For starters, it might factor into Kyle Dubas' job. Like, there's just a lot at stake, in my opinion. This has to be the year that they, even if they don't win a cup, that they at least break through and make, to a deeper run in the Eastern Conference playoffs. So time will tell. I still think they'll be in the top 1 or 2 spots in the Atlantic Division. I have no doubt about that. I can see them being probably between them and Tampa would be my prediction for the top 2. I think Florida might be just a little weakened based on what we've seen from them in the offseason. And we'll see from there. But at least they'll have an excellent year in the regular season. There's lots to look forward to. Lots of questions, though, around exactly all these moves they've made on what the final kind of, normal everyday lineup is going to look like. And once we have the answer to those questions, we can analyze this a little bit further. But certainly let me know your thoughts on the Leafs down in the comments. We'll talk about it further. Of course, stay tuned for the other teams coming on their season preview series. And of course, keep in mind, if you're new, make sure you subscribe, because we will keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.